Welcome to the third day of the European Educational Leadership Week, and we are kicking off with quite an interesting session. My name is Daniel Wiśniewski. I'm the coordinator of the ELNE network and, Secretary General of the European Federation of Education Employers. Today we are starting with a special webinar dedicated to bridging policy and practice. We're trying to see here at European level how does the grassroots can actually influence policy, and to what extent this interchange can actually occur. And I'm here with distinguished speakers, so people that are practitioners who actually are running European projects and engaging the grassroots really. So I would like to welcome first of all to the panel Ms. Natalia Tsitsi, who is a head teacher at the primary school in Heliopolis. And she is actually an eTwinning user and a group moderator. I have with me Dr. Rachel Kate Ann Bowden, who is an academic staff in the Center of working at the Center of Education and Education Research in Germany, who is a coordinator of one of the Teacher Academies that is called TAP-TS. And we're still waiting for our final speaker, Job Bresser, who is a policy advisor at NEDER, which is an institution representing Dutch interests here in Brussels, and working also at MBORAD, who is a Dutch Council of Vocational Education and Training. He's actually specialized in the implementation of COVIs, the Centers of Vocational Excellence. So we have a very interesting mix here. People that actually have been working on eTwinning, on COVIs, so Centers of Vocational Excellence, and a person who is running a Teacher Academy. So welcome to the panel. Thank you very much for joining us. And well, first of all, I would like to maybe ask you to so maybe we can start and do it as a conversation. Right? I have a bunch of questions prepared for you, and I try to maybe ask you some of them. Hopefully that before that also Yep will also join us. I don't see him still. No, he's still not with us. Okay. So first of all, what is, for each of you, how is these good practices examples, either it's eTwinning or Teacher Academies or COVIs, help you to involve the grassroots in the policy-making processes? Have you managed to really do that? Did you encounter challenges about this? What was the response? What is normally the response of the grassroots to all kinds of European initiatives? Because here on the let's say European level, we often struggle with reaching the grassroots. So I wanted to ask you this: what were the the opportunities, the challenges that you see in your projects when it comes to involving the grassroots? And maybe I will start with Dr. Bowden. Is that okay?
Yeah, great. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Daniel. And it's really excellent to be here today. Yeah, so I think bridging the policy level and the grassroots of educators across Europe is one of the objectives of the Teacher Academies action. And our consortium in TAP-TS, that's Teacher Academy Project Teaching Sustainability, it's a consortium of teacher educators. So from initial teacher education and continuous professional development. So we bring strong networks with student teachers, teacher educators in our settings, but also a network of teachers in schools. So we're able to connect the policy priorities of the European Commission with the grassroots. And we've done that in several ways through our project. Just stop me when I get too boring. I don't want to go on.
No, but the question is, how did you really do it? So
yeah.
To what extent you've actually managed to reach the teachers, and what was their experience with your project?
Yeah.
What is their awareness about it? What kind of challenges you have actually encountered there?
I mean, so the whole the mechanism, the focus of our project has been engaging educators, and that's so student teachers, teacher educators, teachers in the co-development of educational resources. So some of those resources are for teacher education, and some of them are for use directly in school. And our guiding framework for those has been Green Comp. So the European Commission's sustainability competency framework. But we haven't done it as a kind of top-down rollout, but rather a critical interaction with the framework in relation to our very different contexts of practice and other educational concerns. Very concrete, what we have at the end is a compendium of educational resources, and these have been co-developed with what we're calling the grassroots, so educators at the chalk face, as you might say. So in interaction with this policy framework. And so I've actually just got back from Brussels, where we were presenting these activities, so classroom activities, which really speak back to the policy framework in terms of how they can be realized in different pedagogical contexts.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks a lot for sharing that. Natalia, what are your experiences with e-twinning? So does really e-twinning work? Does it really reach the grassroots? Because yes, there's lots of discussions here at the European Union level about e-twinning, about all those digital platforms that because of, in the times of COVID, we thought that this entire digital meetings is actually the future. Now we know that in fact, well, it's good for certain things, but not for everything. And what's your experience with the digital platforms and the e-twinning about reaching the grassroots? Do we really reach it?
I think that E20 has been very successful in that. But first of all, let me thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be invited to share my experience with e-twinning, I've been an e-twinner almost half or more than half of my professional life. I've been there since the very beginning when these e-learning actions started in Europe back in 2005. Currently, I'm a teacher and a head teacher, as you said, not a group moderator anymore, but a member of the e-twinning National Support Organization in Greece. You are right when it comes to e-twinning. During the COVID days, yes, the e-twinners, we were equipped with, we had lots of tools we could use for remote teaching, and e-twinning helped us during that period to be resilient and to assist our students. But I think that e-twinning has been successful throughout this 20-year period. Actually, this year we celebrate e-twinning's 20th birthday. And let me
just as a matter of, maybe some of our attendees do not really understand what e-twinning is. Could you say a few words about what it actually is and how does it support those grassroots levels?
Okay. For those that do not know e-twinning, it's a European initiative. It involves formal education practitioners from ECEC, early childhood education and care, right to initial teacher education. In other words, students from the age of 3 to the age of 20 plus can be involved in e-twinning projects and participate in e-twinning projects on the European School Education Platform in e-twinning. That's more or less what e-twinning is in just a few words. I think that regarding the bridging of the gap between policies and grassroots implementation, I think e-twinning manages to do that through a multitude of professional opportunities that provides the teachers with. They come in different formats. So there are online and on-site seminars, workshops, but also articles and interviews and e-twinning publications on the European School Education Platform. And through these professional development opportunities and the digital resources that TwinSpace and the European School Education Platform provides us with, teachers can communicate and collaborate, and there is the possibility to connect with policy making, because all these resources, courses, and events are designed and moderated by the Central Support Service in Brussels and the national support organizations. There is one in each country. And e-twinning has been very successful in bridging the gap also through networking. E-twinners are members of a vibrant community of educators. Communication is ongoing. We rely to each other to learn. And we have the twin spaces we create, the groups and the rooms we create to cater for different needs. For example, for finding other STEM teachers, we can create a group, or actually there is a featured group for that as well. Featured groups are moderated by the Central Support Service. And we have lots of possibilities, lots of opportunities to meet other e-twinners, discuss with them, and what we communicate can also reach policymakers through the platform. And I mean, e-twinning educators are really accustomed. We are very used to sharing ideas, sharing knowledge, supporting each other. And at this point, I would like to share a bit of my experience too. A few years ago, I was attending a 4-week course offered at the School Education Gateway platform, which is the predecessor of the European School Education Platform. And as part of working on the course activities, the teachers participating had to read each other's views and comment on each other. And there was a name I kept coming across, and the name of a maths teacher from Croatia. We shared the same views, and she was very active. And we finally got to work together, and we co-founded a project. And ever since, we've been working together, and I know that she has managed to reach policy-making level, and I think we're both the living examples of e-twinning bridging the gap between policy and grassroots implementation.
Thank you very much for that, for sharing this. I always, when it comes to any kind of resources, we here again, from Brussels' point of view here, we of course are engaged in developing many of those resources. Now, we always struggle with having valid data when it comes to the use of it, because of use, obviously, I mean, one thing we can be developing, the second thing is whether actually the teachers, the educators, the school leaders have the time to use those. And I think it's a valid question for us to kind of evaluate this when it comes to discussion about the common budget and the new budget for the EU and the new programs within the education scope. But anyway, yes.
Let me interrupt there. So if you need to validate or evaluate any material that you have, you can simply reach out to us, and we do it for free, because there is no budget for twinning, at least not for I don't know, in the sense that Erasmus Plus has budget for validation and evaluation and things like that.
Correct. Thank you very much. Job, thanks a lot for joining us. We were waiting for you a little bit, so I'm glad to see your face. Well, first of all, Job, you're actually involved in the implementation of Centers of Vocational Excellence. That is a flagship initiative of the European Commission to foster vocational training, vocational education, link this with industry. So what's your experience there? How is this COVI initiative really received in the grassroots? How are actually schools and industries developing it? How do they benefit from it? What's your experience with that?
Thank you, first of all, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. I'm sorry for the login struggles. Um, I will first give a very brief explanation of the Centers of Vocational Excellence, if that's okay for the
Perfect.
people who don't know what this initiative is. The Centers of Vocational Excellence are an initiative that was started with a pilot in 2019, and then it became part of the Erasmus Plus program 2021-2027. And it is an initiative that is targeting vocational education providers. And these centers of vocational excellence, they are an initiative where you build up skills ecosystems with different stakeholders. So it's not only about the VET provider, it's about inviting the VET provider to cooperate with the stakeholders in their region. And that can be businesses. Actually, businesses are a mandatory stakeholder to involve. It's even written in the call text, but it can also be universities of applied sciences, universities, other like startups. And it's really about modernizing vocational education and making it more responsive to labor market needs. And these centers of vocational excellence are usually sectoral. That means that, for example, a center of vocational excellence connects skills ecosystems in 5 different regions across Europe in a certain sector. So that can be the windmill sector, or it can be the healthcare sector. You have plenty of different sectors that are currently involved. And I think if you look at how does this reach students, how does it reach the grassroots, I think it is in that sense a nice initiative, because you really see that the way of this initiative works is that you really try to modernize education together with the teachers, the students, make the teacher teams, put them in the driver's seat for curricula modernization, invite them to work together with the stakeholders, and really, ensure that in that way you can make vocational education as a whole more attractive, more relevant to real life contexts. And I think it's also nice for the students, because what you see is being developed in this initiatives is that you, for example, work on challenge-based education, where students get a task, a real-life task from a company, and help them to make an innovative project within the company. So that's really nice for the students, and it benefits companies as well. And apart from that, students also get the chance to do internships abroad. We already saw that they do international weeks where they meet in one of the regions that is participating in the project, and they really work together on a certain challenge together for a week. So in that sense, I do think it reaches the grassroots.
Very good. I just, well, I think that indeed it reaches the grassroots. Now, the question is there any feedback going back and forth there between the grassroots and policymakers here? Because you see, I remember Rachel has mentioned that indeed they based their Teacher Academies setup or methodology on the Green Comp. So obviously, this is an initiative of European Commission, and it's clearly based on policy. And you have kind of used it to operationalize it with the use of Teacher Academies. So there's obviously kind of a top-down approach there. But is there actually a good channel of communication with the grassroots, so this policy-making process could also become bottom-up? I wanted to throw this question to all three of you. Do you feel anyone who feels empowered to actually answer that question? So is there any good feedback channel between the grassroots and policy on both sides, not just from, let's say, policy to the grassroots, but also from the grassroots to policy on well, on the examples of your projects? How does it really work?
I could just jump in there with a quick example. And that was, we were very lucky to have our project officer attend one of our international face-to-face teacher education events. So she spent 3 days with a group of about 60 educators from across Europe with co-developing the activities, but lots of discussion about the experiences of different educators in their particular contexts. So that was a kind of open format where this project officer was able to get out of the bubble of Brussels and really hear directly from educators about what they're working on. And I would question as well the idea that our project was top down. I mean, we certainly had Green Comp as a kind of impulse and as a shared framework, but the heart of our project is a teacher professional development project. So that was the core, that was the most important people in the project, and obviously what they were bringing to the project in terms of their expertise, but also the needs and resources of their context. That was really the kind of flesh of the project, and that's what you see reflected in the activities. So I'd really see it as a dialogue between the framework, and that's useful to have if you're bringing together people from different countries, from different school types together. But then through the resources, through the events, lots of opportunity to hear from educators themselves.
Thank you. Natalia, Job, how was it in eTwinning and COVIS? Do you feel that this channel of dialogue between policy and practice actually takes place, and if so, how?
I think it does take place. So if a teacher wants to, for example, use eTwinning to influence policy, there are a number of surveys eTwinning organizes, and I have the feeling that in eTwinning, policymakers are eager to know what the teachers and the schools think. This is the reason why eTwinning invites the users, the platform users, to take part in surveys on a variety of topics. For example, since the beginning of 2025, there have been 2 surveys, one on teaching sensitive and controversial topics and one on children's voices on democracy and voting. And we have the results of these 2 surveys published on the European School Education Platform. And also the NSO spread the word about these surveys through the websites and social media, and they invite teachers to participate. So I think there is a communication channel through the platform, but also through the NSOs in the different countries that participate. There are 46 countries participating in the eTwinning action currently. But in addition, a teacher that wishes to influence...
Let me flip the question, maybe. How about this? I will make it even more difficult for you.
Oh.
Okay. Let's say it does work. Is there something we could do different? Or is there something you could still improve? Do you have any ideas with your respective projects of how this, because yes, I mean, we know eTwinning, we know Teacher Academies, we know COVIS. Is there, from your experience, since you are the implementators of this implementation experience, did it bring any ideas of maybe we could do something different? I see, Natalia, if you have something to say. If not, I give the floor to Rachel directly.
Okay. I think that there is the possibility. The e-twinning provides us with the opportunities to communicate and to reach policymakers, and this is because there is a structure. That is, there is the e-twinner, and then there is the e-twinning ambassador, and there is connection between the two. The e-twinning ambassador covers an area, local and regional, so there is somebody who is very well informed about e-twinning, who is in contact with the teachers, and then the e-twinning ambassador gives feedback to the NSOs, and the NSOs give feedback to the central support services, so there is a connection between the policymakers and the teachers. Of course, there is a lot of room for improvement, and things maybe could be done differently, so that the policymakers can hear more from us. But this could be done, I don't know, maybe through polls or on-site discussions. But this requires a budget, as you mentioned before.
Obviously, digital is indeed cheap, and yet has its positives at the same time. You know, there is obviously a need for this human dimension of it as well. So correct. Job, I will give you a floor just in a minute, because I saw that Rachel was really jumping on her chair to say what could be improved, which means that she has lots of feedback about it. Rachel, what is it that we could do better in the Teacher Academies to enhance this?
Yeah, no, I mean, that is very inspiring. So wouldn't it be wonderful if we began such projects with networks of educators, such as Natalia's network, and some kind of participatory, deliberative process where we have platforms to bring educators together and to exchange experience of the challenges that they face, but also the resources and innovations that they have. And, you know, in a kind of pyramid framework where at each level people vote for what are the most compelling questions, I think this could be a very powerful process, not just to communicate from the bottom up to policymakers, but to really engage educators in professional discussions. And that would be a wonderful basis for then policy making, but also project design that's really based on how can we enable you to do your best work.
Right. So you're talking about bringing the resources that are being developed together with the people, for them to kind of not only get to know it, but also even in a collaborative manner work on it continuously as a continuous process.
I think I'm talking even before that. So not coming with any resources, but saying our role in the Teacher Academies is to support teacher professional development and pedagogical innovation. Before we determine what we're going to focus on, we should have a deliberative process with educators to determine what are the key topics and what support would be most beneficial for them. That would be a really strong foundation for future projects.
Thank you for that. Job, when it comes to the vocational training and the centers of vocational excellence, how is this really happening? Is there a good link between the grassroots and the policymakers? Is there any feedback loop there that brings together all those people, or somehow you see something lacking? And if so, what would you do differently?
Yeah. I think it sometimes depends a bit on the project, but what you do see in many projects, and I think it's an advantage that they are often sectoral based, is that there are feedback loops between the grassroots and the policymakers, and that's because usually many of these projects, they also involve the European umbrella organizations of their sector. So for example, when you talk about Wind at Sea, they involve Wind Europe, which is basically the European Industry Association and they are very well connected in Brussels, and that's how you see the things that are being developed at the grassroots level, reaching also the policy level in Brussels. I was attending an event back in autumn where they organized this event in the European Parliament and really showcased what they were working on and what kind of trainings they were developing. So in that sense, that's where you do see these feedback loops happening. If I could make a suggestion for improvement, I think you can even utilize this more, and that is both a responsibility, I think, of the European Commission to make sure that the things that are being developed within these projects, that they spread and in that way make a systemic change on the whole vocational education system, and that they don't just stay within this project. But I think it's also a responsibility on the national level to make sure that the vocational education institutions that are not connected to this center of vocational excellence, that they also get access to these resources. Otherwise, it might stay a little bit of like a top league of vocational excellence, and I think that's not what you want. You don't want to create a Champions League of vocational education institutions. You really want to have a big reach and big impact, and I think that's something that should be worked on within the new context of the new Union of Skills. And yeah, that would be a big suggestion also to make work of that, to go to the next phase.
I could just jump in very quickly. I really like the term that Jurps used, the ecosystem. And I think that's helpful to not just think as a kind of binary policy and practice, but to recognize that there are actors across different levels, at different levels between. And it's really important to build those networks like Natalia's spoken about. That's a core task of these actions. And then engage the networks when it comes to sharing innovation. But that we also really need to move away from the idea of kind of implementation and rollout towards kind of professional engagement, because innovations need to be interpreted for different contexts. And that process of interpretation is developmental. That's what we want to encourage. So we're not like we nail something perfect and we roll it out, but that we develop innovations that can inspire people, and then we engage people as professionals as part of our ecosystems.
Yeah, one of the things they did within the Centers of Vocational Excellence initiative, they developed a so-called community of practice, where they basically bring all the projects that they have funded together, and that they really have this community where you can learn from each other, where you can inspire each other, where you can help each other out. And I think that's like what also initiatives from the EU need, especially in the current world where where changes happen so fast. Like, we should try not to reinvent the wheel all the time. And I think that's why you need like these communities to really connect people and make sure that they don't have to start from scratch all the time, and that they already, because often, and especially and I think that counts for the Teacher Academies as well and eTwinning, a lot of things are already developed. So when you start with something, probably someone else has already done it before. But yeah, the key is to make sure that these networks are exist and are being nurtured.
Well, I'm going to ask you a tricky question to all of you now, because I feel like we're talking a little bit about, the European cooperation, kind of a link between policy and practice, how this feedback loop exists, and how is this co-created. So I think that Rachel has mentioned here that it's very important that we have this co-designing, not just as a rollout, but rather a co-designing discussion about how each of these innovations can be implemented. But the question is now, look, my experience, maybe I can say a few words about my experience here, because obviously I'm not just an association manager, I also run projects. And my example, or let's say my main challenge, which I often see whenever I work on projects, whether they are policy related or they are exchanges of practice. What I do see is, of course, diversity among the educational systems, and this diversity. So the fact that education is so much into a national level or into a local level, because in many countries, I mean, Rachel, you're from Germany. That's even, you have 16 different systems there. So they are so much either regional, local, or national, that our European initiatives, they somehow feel, I wouldn't say absent, alien to the national, local, or regional systems that we talk about. So it's worthwhile indeed for us to exchange, yet it's very difficult really to use it in those contexts, because we are so different from what we discuss. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about this? Do you encounter this challenge as well? And is there something we could really do to make it more, local specific, regional specific, so people can actually be able to use it, right? So it's not just for us to have a basis for policy development in the future, but also, how can we make European initiatives more local or more applicable? Yeah. Who takes the challenge? Who takes the challenge?
Could I start? First of all, I totally agree with what you said with this communication gap, this failure somewhere in between the European policymakers and the grassroots. For example, when it comes to VET in e-twinning, there are VET teachers that are VET e-twinners who are very much interested in implementing European policies, but the connecting net, the connection, the national educational system doesn't help them to do that, or doesn't encourage them, doesn't provide the necessary conditions. It's not that that it creates obstacles, but it doesn't make it smoother, it doesn't make it easier. Maybe because, let's put it politely, it is not very flexible. So the teacher needs to turn to turns and should find his or her own resources, should find should contact the e-twinning, the central support service, or turn to the European School Education Platform to find the ways, the resources, or the professional development opportunities in order to do a project, a VET project that follows these European initiatives. That's my experience.
Mm-hmm. But Rachel, I'm going to give you the floor. One thing is that, well, I can tell you that in my case at least, people often tell me that what we discuss is all great, and we do this peer learning and we do those European initiatives and so on and so on. But at the same time, it's very difficult for me to apply it in my context, in my school, because my school is in a particular language, so there's a language challenge, it's a completely different system. And so on and so on. So they feel, okay, well, we do it, but it's very abstract in a way, and it's very difficult for us to apply. Rachel.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's a fascinating question, and it links back to a couple of things we've spoken about. So one is this idea of an ecosystem, and so where is policy and practice? But like you said, Daniel, it's not just European policy, but where I am in Germany, we've got national policy and we've got federal, state level policy as well, and then practice. But this complexity, when you're looking at European level, with the diversity of all of these different, national but also subnational contexts, that's a fact of life. That's what education is like. It's very complex. And the answer is not to try and undo that complexity or ignore it and say, we're just going to make the really best ever curriculum and then it will fit everyone. Because
We will
that's
standardize
never
it. We will standardize it.
standardization. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's attractive if you're a business person maybe, or come from industry, an engineer, but it's not how social systems work. It's not what education as a social process, it's not how it works. And that's the reason why you need to foster professional autonomy. Like you said, it's really challenging to say, okay, there's this abstract idea of inclusion. Inclusion is a goal we have to strive towards. But how do I realize that in my classroom or my school? And that's where the work is. And it's not just a work for an individual teacher, it's work for a community of teachers and school leaders and learners and families. And the best work we can do at European level is recognize that challenge and support, with resource for educators to go through those processes at local level. So it's about recognizing what can policy do best, and maybe it's fairly abstract frameworks and guidelines, but it's also the networks and the spaces for exchange and development. And that happens at different levels of the ecosystem. And then there's an opportunity to share examples of situated practice, not because somebody could take it and just roll it out, but because it's an impulse to see an alternative, something else that might be possible. So I wonder if that answers your question. So flexibility is key. Yeah.
I will.
And sorry, Daniel, to step in. I totally agree with Rachel. I feel very happy that we are on the same page. Autonomy is important. Communities of learners and co-workers are important. The problem that you mentioned, Daniel, about the teacher that can't do the project because there is a lack of equipment, or they don't speak the language, they don't speak English, or there are below in digital skills. All these can be solved if they work in an interdisciplinary project, if they work, if they collaborate with other colleagues, with other people, with other, with other colleagues, with other teachers that one specializes in English, one specializes in ICT, the other specializes in, I don't know, something else in that, or in any school. That is interdisciplinarity and collaboration among teachers, things can solve the problem.
But
I think also adaptation to local context is key, and that you see, for example, also in these centers of vocational excellence. There's, for example, it's one of the first projects ever that started. It's like a project about water and water management. And then you have these different regions in Europe collaborating, like Friesland in the Netherlands, but also Malta. So of course the challenges are different, and the local context is different. So if you then roll out like a sort of standardized project, then it would never work. So I think, and that's what's luckily happening in this initiative, that they leave quite a lot of freedom and a bottom-up approach to work within your region on the challenges that you identified. Of course, you still need to answer to like the European water strategy and make sure that it aligns a bit with the policies that the European Union is rolling out. But still, you have this freedom to adapt to the local context, and I think that's very important to ensure that you have that freedom.
I think that particularly in COVIDs, this is really visible, where you actually, you go to very specific local circumstances and very specific centers of vocational training, and yet you need to kind of bring together this European perspective and the local circumstances. Is indeed that was in fact the question I wanted to ask you now. Can those projects, you look again, I will be challenging you with all the difficult questions that appear to my mind. Can those projects, there's thousands of projects, obviously, can they actually create systemic change? Do you feel like they are capable of doing so? What kind of change do you really see? Is there an impact, an influence? We of course we are talking about education. Education is a national, regional, and local competence. EU doesn't really have much of it. The only thing EU can do is provide funding for exchange and certain initiatives. But that's pretty much it. Can those projects that we all develop and we all work on be, the inspiration or the first steps for systemic changes? And if so, do you have any examples of that, that these educational policies have brought that? Yeah, I remember, back, 10 years ago, where Miss Mogherini used to be the foreign minister of European Union. So she was the high-level representative for foreign policy. Now I think she's the rector of College of Europe in Bruges. But Mrs. Mogherini said that the greatest achievement of Erasmus is that we have 2 million marriages coming out of it. And that's but that is one way to put it. There is some impact that we can indeed see. There's an entire generation of people that have been benefiting from mobility schemes and Erasmus. But on the policy change, do you see any convergence happening in any way, or can this global mass of projects contribute to it? Do you have any experience with that?
Mm. What I do see is that, like after this rollout of the Centers of Vocational Excellence in 2021, I think it was a smart decision of the European Commission to also make sure that different countries could invest in national or local centers of vocational excellence via the recovery funds.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You saw that quite a lot of countries did that. So Spain, they now are funding a big network, and France and several other countries have also implemented these national initiatives. And if you look at Erasmus Plus itself and the initiative, I mean, 400 million euros, especially compared to the e-twinning initiative, is a lot of money. So you can do quite a lot with it. But if it's not backed up by also national governments that are changing their policy or that are willing to make the investments in this, I think it is quite difficult to create systemic change. So I think that's, and the interesting thing is that, for example, in the Netherlands, like the European Union is now funding these centers of vocational excellence, but the Dutch government decided to cut the national program for this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, in that way, that's then it's not aligned anymore, and then it's difficult to get this systemic change, I think.
Correct. This is one of my my experience is that often, you know, the European initiatives in education go in contradiction to national or local or regional policies, and then obviously we kind of like doing kind of diversion there with our projects, trying to put something that, well, they may not want, but still we are doing it, yeah. So obviously it's about alignment, and as you said, it's a little bit also depends on political circumstances in a particular setting. But yes, I can see that as well. That this you know, that sometimes, you know, the political powers are not really in favor of what we are doing, and that this discussion in the national or regional or local level isn't always easy. Well, I saw Rachel wanted to take the floor on this as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
told you I'm going to be asking you all kinds of difficult questions, and that's one of them, you know. The base of that question is does it really make sense to provide European funding to a area where we have national competence? That is, you know, the underlying of all this is this. To what extent does it make sense, and what's the added value of it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it absolutely does. And I mean, we've spoken about systemic change, or that was kind of your previous question. Does it bring about systemic change? I wanted to break that down. You know, when you're thinking about a complex system, it's not a single thing. Yes or no, we've changed it, but you're looking at systems and subsystems. So you could talk about systemic change in a classroom, in one classroom. Has a teacher's professional knowledge and professional professional competence or skill changed practice? Or a system could be a school or a network of schools, or it could be a network of teacher education institutions. So I can say very concretely that through building relationships and changing mindsets, changing ideas, and changing practices, that yes, systemic changes, plural, are happening. I completely agree with the point that you need to look at engaging stakeholders beyond educators, so education stakeholders, policymakers, decision makers in national and local systems. That has to be part of projects that are looking for that kind of political systemic change and support. A final point just about the added value of European level actions, and that's this intercultural exchange. And the value of that is precisely in the diversity of people that we bring together, because it's such a great driver for professional reflection and learning, is to see different cultural educational contexts and systems, because then you realize there isn't just one way of doing education. This is a culturally specific practice. So when you can see different situations, different contexts, different issues, different practices, that's a great driver for learning. And so from that point of view, the diversity of contexts, it's not a problem for Europe, it's our greatest resource. And there really is value in creating fora where you bring these different perspectives together, not to choose the best one, but to learn from each other in a respectful way.
Yeah, and I think there's also like this big opportunity now. Like there is this time of change. There is this time of very big challenges for education. Also, like the European Union's Commission said it again in their Union of Skills, like education systems are adapting too slow for the changes. But I think what the point you made is that in that sense, there is an opportunity to really learn from each other because there are all these changes. And I think now, like this value of learning from each other, learning from intercultural and other educational contexts, is now more appreciated even than maybe 10, 20 years ago, because now education systems somehow have to move from initial education to also providing lifelong education. How do you do that? And that's where I think really comes the value of, going to Estonia or going to Sweden. How do you do it there? I think that's like really nice, and I think that's also what Erasmus Plus should focus on stimulating these exchanges.
Well, I can.
Could I
Before I
also
give the
add
floor to
something? Sorry.
Natalia, just before I give you the floor, I wanted to share my personal anecdote, maybe just as a breakout a little bit. Well, I am young enough that I actually did go to Erasmus, and actually when I went to Erasmus, that was in early 2000. Poland was, I'm Polish by origin, by the way. Poland was not member of EU back then, so going on Erasmus was a big deal. Was really a big deal. I remember that it was highly elitist back then, especially for people from non-EU member states. I think I remember I went to London and I studied there. So UK was still in a member state, and so I could go to London. I went there to learn English, really, because back then my English was rather poor. I'm originating from a small village in the middle of Poland, so I'm not really from a big city or anything like that. And I remember when I went there, I saw a completely different world. But that's not really what was the purpose of this Erasmus thing. What was the main benefit happened afterwards when I came back and I realized I do understand my country, my village better, because I am able to see it through the eyes of the outsiders. And so I was able to understand, the social interactions, the systems, as Rachel would say. I was able to better understand my own village because I left it for a while. And in fact, indeed, your horizons, even on a personal level, your horizons are completely different, because from a person that grows up in a certain particular background, going to another background, it's an immense change, and it's a change forever. There's really no way back to what it was. And so every time someone tells me, could we really spend this money better? We could build streets, highways, and stuff like that. It's like, yes, we need to build highways, we need to build artificial intelligence, data, and so on. But I can tell you that on a personal level, and this is a change that is really not measurable in money or in numbers. Natalia.
Yeah, I wanted to agree with you on what you have said and agree with Rachel on systemic changes. There are changes in terms of mindset. Through these collaborations, we managed to start thinking differently. And I think that these European initiatives, talking about e-twinning in particular, it has a major impact on the teachers and the pupils. And I would like to give an example. In the last 4 years, I've had the honor and privilege to work with a group of like-minded, hardworking teachers from Croatia, Spain, and France. We've designed and implemented in our classes for activities for 10 and 11-year-olds. And these activities were inspired by the e-twinning annual themes or courses that we had attended on project-based learning, inquiry-based learning. And we all use e-twinning to engage our students, to make learning meaningful and purposeful and fun. Besides the positive impact on our students and our classes, we have also grown as professionals, and we have also come to feel that our work is appreciated maybe at school level or at national level, but through the prizes, the European, e-twinning awards, or at European level, we get invitations to talk at European webinars. We inspire e-twinners at national gatherings of teachers, and our work is appreciated, our voice is heard. So there is an impact for both, for our students, our schools, and us as teachers. I'm at school, maybe you can hear the bell.
No, we did it. We did it. Maybe you have it well set up in the computer. Thanks a lot for sharing this. So first of all, I will. Well, I still have more questions to you, and I'm gonna just drop them. But before I do that, I also invite people who are in our attendees here. If you would like to ask any questions, post it on chat, and I will try to navigate that and you know, invite our speakers to answer those. Please do not be afraid. I don't know. I feel like with my questions about, you know, saying whether it actually makes sense to do what we are doing. So as you can see, we are not really afraid of questions that could be controversial or even politically incorrect. So please feel free to do that and challenge us a little bit to show that, you know, we actually are heading sort of in the right direction as well with this discussion. So well, we discussed a little bit that it does make sense, that it does change people's lives, that it allows us to understand not only the outside world better and the systems better on the outside world, but it actually helps us to understand our own schools and our own systems better as well. Because the moment we come back, we realize that we understand our system better, and that's as you said. I very much liked what Rachel said, that the diversity of educational systems is actually an asset and not a problem, which I think is something to be really cherished. To see that, okay, we make everything complex and different languages, and everybody has a different system, and then you have to navigate through it, and then we have a problem with diploma recognition, and so on and so on. So whatever we can indeed do to enhance that mobility, we shall, but at the same time, this diversity of solutions is actually an asset, and it in fact shows innovation, because it is a very interesting ecosystem. You use the word ecosystem for innovation in this diversity. Well, I am checking now if there's any questions here from the chat. Let me just see. I don't see the chat yet. I will have to. Okay, I see the chat now, but I don't see any questions. I only see comments from. Wait up, guys. It's not very big here. Ah, voila. Okay, I see here comments from Petra. Petra is here with us from the European School Heads Association. Maybe I can read what she said. I believe that teacher academies are not a sustainable concept. That's a statement. So Rachel, you will have to defend it then. As long as there is funding, they are successful, but without funding, it falls apart. When application for KA1 is needed, it is a barrier, administrative for many teachers. Many teacher academies forget the entanglement for teachers with the role of head teachers. Rachel, you have been called to duty, it seems.
Yeah, great questions, Petra. Important points for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, that, you know, I think about our Teacher Academy, TAP-TS, and, you know, the particular constellation and the particular, you know, work packages, activities we're doing. There's no doubt that that depends on the funding that we've received. On the other hand, there have been many kind of spin-off projects from that. So, for example, between pre-service teacher education institutions, a number of us have done seminars where we bring students together in online workshops as part of their seminars. There have been exchanges of students between institutions, and that's not funded by the Teacher Academy. So the Teacher Academy has enabled kind of connections, relationships that are continuing through other projects. Your point about engaging head teachers is super important. And we've spoken about that a little bit with this idea of an ecosystem, that we don't think about teachers floating around in space, surrounded by nothing, but they're tied into networks of colleagues, but also school leadership within their institution. And if you really want, you know, systemic change, changing school cultures and practices, of course, you've got to engage school communities. Within our Teacher Academy, we had one particular event that was looking at whole school approaches, and we had head teachers also attending that event. But I would fully agree we should look at engaging teachers as part of school communities and not in isolation of them. So final point about engaging with educations outside of Europe. Absolutely, yes. I think that's fundamentally important. And that, you know, this is a message for policymakers as well, but that as Europeans, you know, Europe is not just this geopolitical area that we call the European Union, but Europe is closely connected to places all over the world. And it's important to recognize and build on those relationships as well. At my Teacher Education Institute, we have a strong international network with many countries, many institutions outside of Europe, and we're able to connect them with the work that we've done in the Teacher Academy, but also learn from them with some very innovative practice, particularly in relation, for example, to you know, working in highly diverse contexts. Yeah, so I hope that's provided some answers. Yeah.
Thank
If
you.
I can add to Rachel, I think the part about how to make it sustainable also when the project funding stops. I do think like the Erasmus Plus program 2021-27 has seen quite an improvement in the sense that now when you apply for funding, that they really make you focus on writing the sustainability after the project part within the project. So they put much more emphasis on that compared to the programs before, and I think that's really important. That you think about how to still keep your networks, create maybe even sustainable business models where you try to find a model where you can still have some seed funding for sustaining the most important results you develop within the projects. I think there's still a way to go, but I think that has been an improvement, and I think that should continue on that line. And also, I do think when and that's especially, it's not only about the teachers, it's also about the school leaders. They should realize when they apply for a project such as a Center of Vocational Excellence or a Teacher Academy, that it will have an impact on their school, and because it's about modernizing education, so they should also give teachers the freedom to effectively engage in this project. It's not just about, you know, making a signature like let's do this. It's also, you should also have this school leadership that allows the persons within your organizations to carry out this project.
Yep, you have opened up an entire new Pandora box with your comment about, you know, effective business models of EU projects after their funding is over. I am afraid that since I love this kind of controversial discussions, I would love to pick it up, but I have 5 minutes left.
For a next webinar, we can do a next webinar on business models.
We're going to do that. We're going to do that because obviously it really gets to the bottom of why we do those projects. Whether the aim of the project is to changes people's lives and even on a school level, or is it indeed to make them sustainable and with an effective business model after the funding is over. The ideal situation obviously would be the latter, but we know from experience that it is often not the case, and it also is because we have all those opportunities there, and because of the fact that there's never enough time really to do this. There's always lots of red tape when we are applying for those projects. Ultimately, I think that we often overlook the fact that we should always try to build a project that is sustainable even without funding. But that's obviously is just my opinion. Look, so yes, there's another question here from Marceline, who's calling for international cooperation here. We say, okay, we have quite a bit of European Union based or European cooperation and mobilities. What are your thoughts about expanding that to international settings as well, to other countries? Would there be a benefit to do mobility schemes also with other parts of the world? And if so, how? Anyone who would like to comment on this? I don't know to what extent this is relevant to what you do, but I know that in vocational training right now there is an entire financial scheme for capacity building in other parts of the world and higher education as well. So Rachel and you probably are aware of those. What are your thoughts, maybe? Natalia, you have the I sort of excluded you by my voice from the discussion, so please.
In e-twinning there is no funding, but that's okay, but because we are already open to other countries. There, as I told you, there are already 46 countries participating in e-twinning, and there is also the European School Education Platform gives us the opportunity to expand it to even to other countries around the world. So if we want to run a project with Argentina, for example, we did it a couple of years ago, we can do it. So being extrovert and open, I think it only has benefits for teachers and schools and students. So I'm all for it.
All for it.
I think also for the Centers of Vocational Excellence, it's relevant. I think also it was a call of Roxana Minsatu, the new commissioner, to see how Erasmus Plus can have a bigger impact in the rest of the world. And I hope that that these centers of vocational excellence can expand more to other parts of the world. You already see it happening in some projects. For example, the water management project I mentioned before is now also teaming up with South Africa, because they also have big water challenges there. And I hope that more and more projects will do that. Unfortunately, you do see, and I think that's something to work on, is that there's not always this link yet between the centers of vocational excellence and these capacity building projects. Mm-hmm. So I think it should be more stimulated to
look at
add these capacity building projects to the existing projects. Mm-hmm. Because in many sectors, like for example, solar power, winds, like it's so logical to cooperate with education systems outside of Europe. And it's probably even strategic for Europe, especially in the current world, to do this. So I hope that they will think about that in the new Erasmus program.
We can always let them know. Rachel, the final words there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo my colleagues there that it's very, very important, whether it's the global challenges that we face around sustainability, or whether it's learning valuable lessons about how to benefit from diversity in education systems, or if it's shared projects of innovation around, our evolving digital world. I think partnerships beyond Europe are incredibly important, but we have to also think beyond this idea of capacity building and have some humility in Europe for the centres of expertise that exist outside of our borders, and recognise how much we also have to learn.
Correct. Well, thank you very much for this very interesting discussion. In fact, I think we touched upon many important points there, and sometimes we even get to the bottom of it when it comes to money management and challenges. So, although I think with the your first interventions you tried to play safe, I think we've managed to squeeze you out and get the meat of it. So thanks a lot for sharing this. I think that indeed this is a lot of food for thought for also our ongoing discussion of how to make these programs better, because obviously right now with the discussion on new EU budget, with the new multi-annual financial framework, as well as the new Erasmus, whatever that will be, linked to the Union of Skills. These comments and especially this discussion about the the sustainability of projects, about what should be their focus and so on, is particularly important. Thanks a lot also for sharing with us, your experience between the grassroots and policy making, where you said that indeed there's a existing feedback loop between these two, and this interaction does exist. And finally, I just wanted to say that, and maybe I will conclude with this, is that indeed those projects, and especially for those people that benefit from those projects, they actually change people's lives, and they really open your horizons. And as I said with my even personal story about Erasmus, once you are exposed to it, there's really no way back. And I think that's the most beautiful part of the work we do. So again, thanks a lot for being with us, and for our viewers. Maybe I just name you again. So thank you, Rachel, Natalia, and Job.
Thank you.
Thank you for this. Thanks a lot for our attendees and viewers for coming up after the break. We're going to run another webinar. The webinar that follows will be about school resilience, and that will start in 11:15, so in approximately half an hour, 25 minutes. If you're interested in the topic, if you're interested in the school resilience, we're going to talk with the researchers and experts about this. How can we really prepare the schools for the future, for all the changes that we have been actually experiencing? Because obviously over the last couple of years, we had war, we had COVID, we had multiple things. We had migration, intense migration, and involvement of children from different backgrounds in the school context. So all these questions will be asked in the following webinar. Stay with us. We are meeting again at 11:15. And for now, my name is Daniel Wiśniewski. I wanted to thank you for the session, and